Hello, this is Pat McDonald, your host for Banter and Beans. It's a summer show that Ben Kinsley and I are co-hosting. Ben, hello.
Hello.
Glad you could join us this morning. We've been primarily doing reviewing all of the bills that got passed last legislative session, which most of us know nothing about. There was 100 bills passed, and I think maybe the press covered, going to be generous, 10. That's probably on the high side. And so there were at least 90 you know nothing about. But today we've done a lot of bills up to this point. And today we wanted to talk about the Vermont State College system and their transformation team. Maybe if you'll remember, what, about a year ago that Jeb Spalding issued a report about what he thought should happen to the state college systems, which included closing VTC. Some of us who are incredibly supportive.
Closing the Randolph campus.
The Randolph campus. I'm sorry. Yeah, they wanted to go to Williston. You're right. I'm sorry. And which got me very upset because I'm a true proponent of tech ed. And so his report didn't really go over very well. And rushed to today, the colleges are in trouble, as we all know, funding wise, and they need to come up with a solution very quickly. So they have put together a transformation team, and which has been meeting constantly, and that's been very interesting to track their notes. We wanted to go through their most current report because it's very inclusive, and the task force members are working really hard. They, in turn, report to the State College Board of Trustees, and the Board of Trustees will have the final say of the recommendations that go to the legislature. I believe the deadline is December. And so this has been a very interesting process to watch. Everybody is truly dedicated, and the meetings are very interesting. Everybody speaks up. Let me give you what the goal or mission of the transformation team is. There's 6 items, and we're going to go through them in our discussion. First is address program duplication. This is where they're trying to bring all of the campuses together, and just because there are duplicate programs, and they want to streamline them and put them perhaps where they're most attended. The second bullet is to ensure quality, financial viability, and access to programs. The third is to clarify distinguishing characteristics of member institutions, which I think I'm a very big proponent of the New York system, the SUNY system, because each campus has a focus. One might be math and science, another might be arts and arts. And I think that just makes so much sense. I'm hoping that's what they're doing.
That does seem to be the direction they're moving in.
Yeah,
listening to the chancellor talk, that does seem to be what they're trying to do. It's going to be like, State University of Vermont at Castleton, or State University of Vermont at, Johnson or whatever. So that is the model they're sort of going towards, and it sounds like they do want each of those schools to specialize in certain things, because part of the issue that they're running into is that there's only so many students interested in one particular course of study, and their colleges are sort of cannibalizing each other.
Yep, right. And I would think not only are there so many students, but I'm assuming there are so many teachers out there who have the qualifications and who want to come to Vermont. So that's an issue too, I'm sure. So continuing on with these bullets, strengthen the VSCS's focus on core high demand programs that meet the needs of today's students and the Vermont workforce. Identify sustainable strategies to deliver programs and provide student support in rural areas of Vermont. And lastly, reconfigure the system in organization, finance, governance, and accreditation. So laudable goals for sure. And not only do they have this transformation team, but they have got many subcommittees that are working on specific bullets that I just mentioned. And two good things actually, they have involved the students in record number. These kids are just working really hard to help the college, because They love it there and want it to succeed. And then they are planning to hold quite a few public hearings so that the public, the old taxpayers, will be able to weigh in. And don't you think, the college campuses at Linden and Johnson, what if they called the combined college campus Linden Johnson? Don't you think that would create attention? Just saying, just saying. But anyway, I thought that was an obvious name for those two campuses. They chose not to listen to me. I can't imagine why. Anyway, on a more serious note, so Ben, I don't know if you want to just jump in and talk about some of the things that they're up to. There's quite a bit, so we can sort of bounce around. You're Ben, I can't hear you.
Oh, how about that?
That's probably better. Good, thank you.
So one of the things I think is most interesting is the naming committee, because that's where a lot of the pushback has been, was on the naming convention, because some of the colleges feel really
Right.
strongly about their brand, and they don't want to lose their brand. Specifically, Castleton
Yeah.
was very concerned about losing the Castleton University brand, which seems likely to happen under this new plan. Honestly, the Vermont Tech, the Randolph campus, I think is just happy to be included as part of as part of the functioning campus system, and to some degree, so are Linden and Johnson. So, I think Castleton has been the noisiest because their head is not on the chopping block, I guess, is the
Right.
way to put it. Interestingly enough, though, like Castleton is the strongest financially out of the standalone universities. CCV is the strongest by far. Like CCV is floating the system, or has been floating the system.
Right.
But even though Castleton has been stronger than Vermont Tech and Northern Vermont University, they're still not cash flow positive. So that's an important distinction to make. So when you hear, Castleton saying, "Oh, don't change us," even though Castleton's been doing better, they're still pulling money out of the system. They're not contributing to it the way that CCV is. So that's important to understand. I think also, there needs to be a little bit of a shift. One of the other things I'm really excited about that the chancellor's working groups are working on is really this course alignment. So it's not just removing duplication in coursework across campuses, right? Because you really need a master of history at both Castleton and NVU. Probably not. You can have one of those campuses do that course, and focus on that and specialize in that, quite honestly, because if they can do it better, if you can consolidate the best pieces of your different various programs in one campus, make it better, have a better product, then that's worth doing. But what I think is really interesting and beneficial is they're not just trying to reduce duplication, they're also trying to better align their coursework with employers, which is
concept.
Which is what CCV has done so effectively. They've partnered with a lot of local businesses, and particularly larger manufacturing and tech companies like IBM. You can think of IBM as one of them. Vermont Tech did this a little bit with their Williston campus, which is why their Williston campus was in a better financial position than their Randolph campus, because they were pairing some of their programming with established businesses in the community. But I think this is really critical for a couple of reasons. First, it positions our state colleges in a critical workforce pipeline, because we have a workforce challenge in the state. It's not that we're undereducated, it's that we're miseducated.
I like
so
that.
We have, Vermont has one of the highest rates of persons with bachelor's degrees. The problem is that most of those degrees don't align with actual workforce needs. So that is a problem. And the way that you can address that is, one, have coursework that more closely aligns with, or degree programs that more closely align with, what the workforce needs actually are. But more importantly, having certificate and training programs that are also aligned. And this is what CCV has done really well. Our tech centers have done this to some degree, and that's probably the next layer to this to look at is, once we get the state colleges in alignment, then creating a clear pipeline from employers and the state colleges and the tech centers all the way down to high schools, so that there's a clear funnel, a path forward for these kids that are coming out. And one of the interesting things that Vermont could do, we have the capacity to do, that a lot of other states, not a lot of other states, that other countries do, is that coming out of high school, even like this last 2 years of high school, what you're really doing are internships and, in some cases, apprenticeships for your last 2 years of high school. And then you go into what sort of amounts to a prep school. And in our, Vermont system, that could be a tech center, that could be CCV. You do that for a year or two to get a certification in, whatever field you're interested in. And then you can go on from there to complete a 4-year degree or, a graduate degree. We have the ability, we could have that pipeline in place to do it that way. But it's very successful because people find out what they're passionate about. Like one of the problems with the American form of education is that we kind of just expect people to figure out what they are interested in doing, right? At 18 years old, it's like, oh, here you go. Like, got to figure it out.
Figuring out.
Yeah. So, but they don't have any experience. Like, it's like, oh, I think I want to be an accountant. Well, how many 18-year-olds have actually sat down and, understand what accounting actually is or means from a day-to-day perspective? So having that ability to go in and do an internship or something like that and see, this is what this looks like. And then you can do that for accounting. You can do that for, maybe you can do an internship in a law office, or, do an internship in an auditor's office. Like, some of those, different things get different experiences, and that helps, better inform what you actually want to do.
That's right.
Get those hands-on experience.
Well, I worked for 20 years for Ciba Geigy Corporation in Ardsley, New York, and they are, their parent company is in Basel, Switzerland. And all of Nestle, Sandoz, I can't remember the companies at Ciba Geigy, were on the board of directors of the local tech center. And they paid beaucoup bucks to be part of that system. And that's why their system is so successful, because they're actually making sure that these kids, when they graduate, have jobs. There's a concept. And they really listen to the employers. It's taken a while for our folks to figure that out, because when I was in education, I brought tech center folks together with businesses to try to start that conversation.
Yeah.
But it didn't go very well. Plus, I think this group, I'm hoping, is going to talk to the high schools, because a former head of VTC told me that kids come out of high school, they don't have the requisite skills to start the tech center training. So they have to spend the first couple of months getting these kids up to speed in math and science and the things you need to support a tech ed study. And I always thought, good grief. And I also think, last thing, they're going to have courses available in high school for the kids who are super achievers and may want to get a head start on college or tech ed. So they're all going to be offering courses in high school, which a lot of states do.
So in a previous life, I was in a electromechanical engineering program at Vermont Tech at the Williston campus, and there was a very clear workforce pipeline. And this was, I don't want to say how long ago it was.
A while.
A while ago. But even at that point, like there was already a workforce pipeline, a clear workforce pipeline for the program that I was in, because all of these graduates from the program were going to IBM, they were going to NRG Systems, they were going to All Earth Renewables, like all of these manufacturing, technology manufacturing companies that were doing a lot of engineering work. So like there was a very clear workforce development pipeline for that particular program. And the same thing for the other really successful program at the Williston. Actually, there's several at the Williston campus, but they have a dental hygiene program, and again, they have relationships with like over a dozen different dental offices around the state. Very clear development pipeline. It's like, hey, we've got graduates coming out. They get placed within like 2 weeks, like 100% placement rate in 2 weeks. Like it's crazy.
Yeah, but I think they're not only just focusing on the tech center kids, they're focusing on the academic colleges or campuses as well, because as you said, sometimes they pick courses that are a little hard to find jobs that go along with them. So I'm so old, we used to have guidance counselors. That was their job, to work with us for all 4 years of high school to help us figure out what we wanted. I mean, they don't do that anymore. They're more like performance counselors and watching the way, the kids, that they behave and all that stuff, and dealing with sort of human services issues rather than guidance. There's just no time, sadly. Anyway,
The other
the
other thing that was really interesting, because this came up on one of our Vote for Vermont episodes, and again, just another example of how we can be creative. The Central Vermont Medical Center partnered with VTC for a nursing program, because they were having a hard time getting nurses, and there is a known nurse shortage in Vermont. There has been for the last 10 years, but Central Vermont in particular was having a really difficult time recruiting nurses. So what they did is they started taking. They realized as they were talking with their employee base that a lot of their folks that were assistants, like nursing assistants or doing or technical assistants, wanted to be nurses, but the problem, they couldn't afford to not work while they pursued a nursing degree.
Right.
So realizing this, Central Vermont partnered with Vermont Tech, and they created a new program for these people that were in this situation. And basically, the Central Vermont Tech did all the programming. They brought their classroom into the Central Vermont Medical Center campus, so that they had classes on site. They held them at night or at convenient places before or after shifts for a lot of folks. And they had to stretch it out a little bit. It wasn't quite as condensed as a normal like 2-year course would be. I think they made it a 3-year course. But the brilliance of it is that it allowed people to work while they were doing, getting their certificate for nursing, and also, Central Vermont ended up paying for most of it. I think they paid for like 80% of the costs of the coursework. So that's a great example of
That's excellent.
Partnerships between our higher education institutions and anchor businesses in the community.
Out of the box thinking, as they say.
Exactly.
So listen, I found a list of the subcommittees that I wanted to read to you all, and they have started putting out drafts of recommendations. So if you're really interested in this, get on their website and track these sub-teams down. There's one on business planning and administration, operations and processing, IT services, facilities planning, employee services, and procurement and purchasing and task force. And I'm really excited about how they're looking, thanks to the COVID, I guess, looking at having a telepresence, how IT will work into the way we're delivering courses, particularly in the rural areas. That sometimes it's just hard to get there from here. So they're going to help kids out with that. They also, I think you have the information on these stakeholder surveys they did. They are reaching out to our students, to our stakeholders, to the teachers themselves, and to the alumni to see what, in their view, from their perspective, what are they ranking priorities on of all the things that. And it's very interesting. On all of the surveys, number one, no matter who you are, was affordable education. And the last one, sadly to say, was a strong alumni support team. Speaking of financial, you must have a strong alumni support team. But anyway, all of the stakeholders ranked about 15 topics, and affordable was number one, and maybe not so strong on alumni support was the last one. But just skipping around here, access to a wide variety of technical classes, access to career services, which is what you were talking about, and remote access to learning. So all of the people involved, I'm sure it's from COVID, people were like, no, you've got to learn in a classroom. Well, maybe not. So, and there's a lot of savings to be had there. And clearly, I don't know the amount, maybe Ben, you do, that the legislature bailed out the college this session and gave them a serious chunk of change.
Well, it wasn't so much the legislature, it was the federal government bailed them out.
Oh, well, thank you, federal government, because we would have been.
Which is good. It's actually over the next 3 years. It's like something like $45 million over the next 3 years.
Right.
Which is good because it solves the immediate crisis issue. We know that there's still a structural issue, and fortunately, the state college system and the trustees are taking that seriously. That there is a structural issue, but it gives them time to actually do the work.
Right.
Yeah, so that's encouraging that they're taking that opportunity, that buffer that the federal government has handed them, and they're using it as seemingly they're charging full speed ahead on this. So that's good.
You know what else they're doing, which besides all of the obvious recommendations about making sure that we're consolidating the different colleges in an appropriate manner, that we've got the investments, that we've got a core education program that will be applicable in all of the campuses, so that the entity presents a specific picture of core. But they're also looking at the sites themselves, the physical structure. What buildings do we need? What can we use them for? How can you bring people into those buildings that maybe give the students, as you were saying, perhaps an ability to help, like say the healthcare agencies, maybe senior living or something right on the campuses, so that we're not maintaining and paying for all these buildings to be kept up. And they're right there, and they can easily, since a lot of the dorms were obviously where kids living, you could change them into perhaps a senior citizen home or something. Years ago, I'm going to do this quick because we're running out of time, but years ago down at the vet's home, they had a daycare center in the vet's home at some spaces that they weren't using. They don't have it anymore, sadly, but when I would go down there and you'd see the vets interacting with these kids, honest to God, it was the best medicine ever for the vets, and I might say for the kids too, because they got to see older people in action, sort of, and it was a win-win for everybody. I don't know what happened, but it's not there anymore, which is sad. But they could also use the facilities for business incubators, which is a big thing in Vermont.
Yep, absolutely.
And I mean, they could go on and on for what you could do with the existing sites, and I hope they come up with, as I hate this expression, but a win-win for everybody, for Vermont, for our housing, for housing issues and the students.
Yeah, and I don't think the conversation right now is not about closing any campuses. It's about
No.
reducing the footprints of those campuses. So they may not use all the buildings. Some of those buildings may be turned into alternate housing. Some of them may
Right.
be turned into business space or incubator space. So that's a big piece of this puzzle too, is figuring out what to do with some of that extra space that campuses may end up with. Another kind of cool example, the Randolph campus for Vermont Tech has the state lab, state forensics lab
Correct. That's right.
on campus. So that's mostly a function of they're pretty centrally located. It's easy to get to Randolph from just about anywhere. So it kind of
Is
works
it
out.
still the fire academy down there, Ben? The fire academy used to be down there. I know they moved to state police years ago, so they have a
Yeah, state
presence in
police is
Waterbury.
Brandon now.
Yeah.
I'm not sure where fire is. I think fire moved too, but I can't remember where they moved.
Well, the actual offices and stuff moved to Waterbury under public safety, but they used to have fires at the campus down there and use it for training, which there's plenty of space and place to do that without gagging out neighbors.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly.
I'm also looking at where they are. They have put out draft recommendations, and I think if you're interested in what's in the future of our state colleges, you really should check it out and weigh in because they want to hear from the public. Um, and I think we've pretty much covered most of them. They did hire, and which is a good thing because this is hard to do. And for even though people are smart and they're very committed, they need a little guidance on how to take all this stuff and make a good plan out of it. So they have hired external consultant one, I believe, to help them develop a proposal. Particularly as you were mentioning, the branding is not an easy thing to do. May sound like it is, but it isn't because it's got to satisfy a whole lot of people and project what you're trying to sell, quote, and sell. And branding, if it's done right, does that. So um, they've got a big charge ahead of them, and I don't envy them because goes fast the time and and of course you can't keep everybody happy, I'm sure. It's the Storbeck organization which is also presenting to the board of trustees, and so far what I've seen they're doing a very good job.
Yeah, it's exciting, and we'll continue to watch it closely. And I'm excited to see what they're going to do.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
we are out of time for this morning, but thank you all for joining us on Banter and Beans, and we hope that you get a better understanding of what is brewing in Vermont. And until next time, we will keep drinking our coffee, and we'll
Yeah,
see you next
drink
week.
up.